I think the beauty in our industry is, and part of the point that this book makes is that there are ways, many ways, frankly, and I think most of them apply, that when we focus on the people in our business, the staff, the people running it, the ownership too, right? And we make sure that we're taking care there, it actually impacts those numbers in a positive way.
Hello and welcome to the Bar Business Podcast, where we help bar owners increase profits, attract loyal guests, and simplify operations so you can avoid burnout and finally enjoy your life outside of your bar. I'm your host, Chris Schneider, the Bar Business Coach. The Bar Business Podcast is brought to you by QuickSpec. And full disclosure, I'm a co-founder. We built QuickSpec to give you back your time and help you work smarter, not harder. QuickSpec connects your POS data, layers in real-world context, and gives you actionable forecasts and KPI dashboards that allow you to make data-driven decisions so you can spend less time guessing and more time on what matters. Staff smarter, order better. Stop planning for rushes that never show up or getting caught off guard by the ones that do. When you make decisions based upon real data, not guesswork, you get your time back and your team runs smoothly. Check it out at quickspec.com. That's QUIXSPEC.com. And make sure to sign up for our early access program on the homepage. Today on the Bar Business Podcast, we are joined by two fantastic guests, Dave and Dave of Dave and Dave Consulting. Now, if you've listened to this podcast a lot, if you've checked out the Party of Six panel we do, you know Dave Nitzel, but you don't know his business partner that he's been hiding in the background, Dave Domzalski. And so we have both Daves here with us today. And one of the things we're going to do is break down and talk about their new book. So if you've paid attention to the podcast, you probably know they wrote The Bar Shift, which is one of the top bar or books about the bar industry that exists out there. They also wrote Hospitality DNA. And now they've kind of shifted gears again in how they're writing books. And they're coming out with a book called A Tale of Two Taverns, if I'm not mistaken, which is more of a business fable. So it's something different and unique in this industry that we haven't seen before, but does a great job of telling a story. So with that, Dave and Dave, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having us, Chris. Always a pleasure.
And something else I will note, because I'm sure you guys that are listening can imagine, Dave Nitzel and I have a little bit of friendly competition. So if you look behind me, I have that new book, Menus That Sell, that is coming out. Dave has his new book coming out. So there's a little bit of sales competition here. So whoever you like more by the end of this podcast, go buy their book. Actually, go buy both books. But if you have to pick one, just pick who you think is better by the end of the podcast.
I like that. Let's put some skin in the game, Chris. So I say, Chris, we do this. Maybe we go do a book signing at Tales of the Cocktail, if we can both swing it. And then loser buys drinks. Let's put some real skin in the game. We have loser buys drinks for the winner down in New Orleans at Tales of the Cocktail, and let's see if we can pull off a book signing down there.
I am completely down.
All right.
Let's make this happen.
Since I'm not part of this bet, you both can buy me a drink when we're down there.
Well,
Sound good?
you're going to
Sounds
have
good
to
me.
be there.
I
You'll
will,
have
but
to
you
be
guys
there.
both buy me a drink. It's your bet.
Oh,
I
is
want
that
some
the
drinks. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I feel like, Domzalski, I owe you a drink or two because I have Nitzel on all the time and you never get to come hang out.
I would appreciate that, and I'll buy them right back for you. It's the hospitality way.
In the next hour, you might find out why we hide Dave a little more.
So let's dive in here on this new book, A Tale of Two Taverns, because one of the things I think is really interesting about it, when we look at kind of what's gone out there for bars and about the industry, there's a lot of educational information. There are, well, I won't say there are many, but there's a fantastic deep dive on the people behind the industry that you guys wrote. And now you've come up with a totally different type of book, being a fiction book that shows you all the stories and the lessons you need to learn. What made you guys attracted to this kind of fable idea?
So, besides to it, so the first book, The Bar Shift, is pure information dump. So the type of book that is we just took all our knowledge, we had to know the things, and we wrote it out. It's not the prettiest writing, it's not prose, it's like functional, right? It solves a very specific issue. If you need to, or fills a specific need. If you need to know how to do some, things in running a bar, this will get you a lot of the way there, and it'll do it pretty easily. I like to call them a bathroom break book. It's perfect for one trip to the bathroom per chapter. Hospitality DNA, again, very different book as well. As you said, it's a research book, and the service that we had to pay there was to the people we interviewed, as well as to our audience. So we felt that as we were writing that book, we owed it to the people. We took their time and their stories. We had to present those out in a way that did them proud, right? We owe these people. And then, of course, it needed to have some way to teach out those lessons to the public, to the people who are taking time to read the book. And for the third one, at its core, it's not a, so I'm going to say something. It's a culture book. It's not a book that teaches you how to do culture. This is cultural concepts in this book. Whereas the first one's like, hey, we're going to teach you how to run a bar. Then it's like, hey, we're going to show you how these people became successful. This is more of a culture conversation. And in my experience in books, right, you've got that type of concept tends to work well in a business fable format. So I think Patrick Lencioni's Getting Naked. That's a book about, using a culture of being vulnerable and coaching to do sales, right? So it's very much a cultural conversation. So that was part of it. Also, Dave Nitzel really wanted to write a business fable and told me, hey, let's write a business fable. And so we did, because that's what I generally do. I do whatever he says to write. Oh.
True.
It's interesting the way you phrase that, because you say this is more of a culture book, but something I noticed as I was reading through the new book is that a lot of the things that you point out in the bar shift are there, right? A lot of the lessons that come out in Hospitality DNA are there. And it almost, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but it's almost like a more subversive way of getting people to understand what's going on, because it's giving you that real world example, almost like a case study of here's what happens when you do things right, and here's what happens when you don't do things quite right.
Part of what I've learned in this journey of becoming a coach in the last, say, 5 or 6 years is there's different types of learners. And that's really important. I do a lot of work with the speaker community as well. I coach public speakers, and I coach coaches. And I also happen to do a lot of heavy lifting in hospitality. I love it. One of the things that I've learned that's really important is imagine an audience, and you're speaking to an audience. And in that audience, you basically have 4 different types of learners in the audience. You have your dominance people, your authority types, your alpha types, who are essentially in the audience just saying, just tell me what to do. Just get to it. What do I need to do? Then you have a group of people who are your data guys. What's the empirical evidence that this is true? They want their version of proof. Then you have your emotional learners who they want to be told a story. They need to connect with the message. And then you have a group of people that are more moral driven. What's the right thing to do here? And so essentially you have these, in my mind, you have these 4 audience archetypes, and you want to be able to connect with all of them. And the truth is, most of the time, we're only connecting with maybe a quarter of them because we tend to communicate in the way that we receive. So if you are a dominance, authority-driven type, you're probably communicating that way, which means you're reaching only 25% of your potential market, which is really pretty incredible. And this is great stuff for coaches and consultants out there. How many different ways can we say the same things and continue to reach a broader audience? So you're exactly right. We pulled from, without question, the first 2 books, and that was very intentional. I said, Dave, look, everything we need for our business fable is in the first 2 books. And we want to also create brand consistency. So this all should seem somewhat familiar, but told in a different way. And we're going to strike people where they're going to read this book and go, Eureka, I get it now. And they may have read the other 2 books, but picked up something completely different. So for example, the bar shift, I would say, falls into that alpha dominance type. Just tell me what to do. And then Hospitality DNA, I feel research book is a little more on the data side. It's fairly scientific. It's a deep dive. So prove it to me. And that's your prove it book. And this one is more of your emotional storytelling. Let's connect with that person that needs to identify with characters. And I grew up on business fables. I kind of love business fables, going back to like Who Moved My Cheese. So yeah, you're spot on. And that's that's very savvy on your part to pick up on that. But that's the bigger idea, is to connect with same messaging told very differently to a broad audience.
And one thing that's interesting to me about it, though, is the bar shift is a little bit of a longer read. Hospitality DNA definitely takes a while to get through because there's just so much in there.
Yeah.
And I am definitely the data guy. Hospitality DNA was great because just like you mentioned, Dave, it spoke to a lot of that data.
Mm-hmm.
But with the Tale of Two Taverns, what I found was it was a quicker read
Mm-hmm.
and it almost and this sounds weird because I'm a data guy, but it almost got the information deeper in my brain quicker
Mm-hmm.
because it's just showing you this great example. And without giving away the plot, I do want to ask some questions on a few things.
Yeah.
Because the setup, just so that the listeners know, you have essentially two bars. You have a guy named Jim that starts a bar across the street from a lady named Alice who has a bar named Wonderland, which is a fantastic bar.
Yeah.
And Jim is a former software guy that just decides to open a bar. So when you were thinking about writing this fable, why'd you pick those two folks as kind of the archetypes of the two sides of the bar industry?
Yeah, I'll take that to start off. First off, I thank you for acknowledging the Wonderland. There's just enough cheese, and it's a business fable, so that's enough cheese in there, right? Uh,
Absolutely.
so these characters, first off, kind of come from a bit of us, right? One thing that we knew very quickly and understood when it comes to storytelling, just new to us, where we had to do some learning here on how to do this, is you take a bit of your reality of who you are and you put it into these characters and these stories, and it makes it a lot more relatable. So the fact that it got deep into your head, like I hadn't thought about that, I think that means that we did a really good job. And it sounds boastful, I guess, but I think that means we did a really good job at telling the story in such a way that you're feeling it, right? You're going on that journey and going, oh, this could be, I could see myself like this, I could be that guy. For me, Jim at his surface level is very much Dave Nitzel. He's an ex-corporate guy. He had a huge team. He's used to having a lot of people around him to do these things and so on. But then on his journey, he's more similar to me. So you've got, I started out as a data process guy. I didn't understand people culture very, very well. And as I've grown in my business, I now would say I have a pretty deep and strong understanding of it and activate on it. And so two different aspects in there. And with Alice, I'm actually going to let Dave answer that a little bit further, but Alice is sort of like Dave's deeper core side, personality side. But it was very intentional for us to have those characters be relatable. We worked very hard on their dialogue, on their character traits. Like we sort of pulled a little bit from. Are you familiar with the? It's going to sound silly. The Roadrunner, Wile E. Coyote dynamic of how they set those characters up, right? The rules, right? So the Roadrunner the Coyote can never catch the Roadrunner. The coyote can never have fatal damage. Right? So there's all these rules. We kind of did something similar with these characters, right? So they had to behave in a certain way. Jim has to be have a little bit of arrogance, but be likable, right? But it's earned error because it's earned. Like this guy knows what he's doing, but he has to have some vulnerability or some. He has to have growth throughout the process, right? So that was important to the character, right? So we had these sort of rules that we had, and we worked with that to try and build something that you could relate to. So it sounds like you did a decent job. And but the other person being Alice, who that's much more on the Dave side of people person.
Well, and Dave, before I throw this to you, I just want to point out, you guys did a fantastic job developing these people. And what amazed me was whether it was Alice or Jim, as someone that's owned a couple bars, I was able to look at that and go, hey, I did that. Hey, I made that dumbass mistake. Oh yeah, and then I made that good idea afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It was all things where I feel like as a bar owner, you can see yourself in those situations. And if not yourself, you know someone that has done that. And you can really empathize with the characters because it's just so relatable and down to earth how they're behaving.
I think that's right. On a surface level, Dave nailed it. But once you get your characters set, I think as they went on their journey and their personalities, it was really just this amalgam of all these experiences that we've had coaching people. I mean, we've worked with so many. To be honest, the content came easy, really did. I mean, these are real world things that we work on all the time. This tends to be a little bit more towards my specialty on the people culture type stuff. And I wanted to do the fable, so I was pretty excited to do this. So the writing came easy. What's a little harder is structuring a fable. Like, I don't know, I have no idea how to do that. So we had to do a lot of, like Dave said, like, how do you build the characters? What kind of journey do they need to go on, and what's that need to look like? So we didn't overcomplicate it. The message is, even though there's a lot in there from the other books, the message is a pretty tight message. We didn't go wide with this one. It's narrow and deep, where some of the other messaging has been sort of broad and shallow in terms of like the depth of it, perhaps. This one is pretty tight in terms of the message that we're trying to convey to the reader.
So along those lines, and again, I don't want to give away the fable, but I do want to ask about one specific character that you guys threw in there that I thought was just, I got to this part and I was just laughing, which is Bradley Worthington, who is a
Yeah.
consultant that
Yeah.
comes in early on
Yeah.
and is, quite frankly, I think as a consultant coaching type person, like the archetype of the person that I'm not really a huge fan of. Written so well. And I want to dive in a little bit there, but before I throw it over to you guys, I just want to say I loved the fact that he drove an old Mercedes. Like that just ended
That's Dave.
together for me.
That was all
Yeah.
Nitzel.
Yeah, look, that was a very personal touch. I was like, look, this guy's going to roll up in a classic Mercedes convertible. Like, there's just, yeah. Look, I have fun with the car stuff, as you know. I had fun with that character too. But there's a part of me, I don't know how deep psychologically to go. There's an element that we can become the things that we hate the most. I loathe coaches and consultants during my come up. Really did. Didn't need someone telling me what to do or how to improve. I know this stuff. Just stay out of my way. During my early years, to some extent, Worthington's a product of maybe a more classic 1980s or 90s type guy. But we wanted a bit of a foil in there. And so that's part. And then another part is, and Dave and I talk about this a lot, and this, and I don't aspire to be overly provocative. We're not provocative, I don't think, really in any of our books very often, but I do have a bit of a grind. How do I say this? There's no real barrier to entry to becoming a coach or consultant. You can sort of be unemployed in any industry and then hang a shingle that says coach, consultant, hire me. And it sort of dismisses the idea that there's a real profession behind it. And I'm guilty of being a little opinionated on that stuff as well in the past. It was nice to have someone to throw some stones at. At the same time, incredibly competent person. This is not an incompetent person. This is an extremely competent person. He's not a bumbler in any way. So it was important. The characters, there are no bumblers. Like these are all strong characters, which was also another important aspect to us, is bumblers are sort of easy fodder. It's too simple to write it that way. There's a lot of really smart people out there, really smart, really struggling. And we were more writing to that effect. But and we can talk about, if you want to go deeper on Bradley, we can do some of that.
Well, I think it's really interesting, that last point you made, in that no one here is a bumbler, right? Even though Bradley, like, yeah, he's kind of your classic consultant. He is that 1980s, 1990s.
Yeah.
Kind of has like a Gordon Gekko feel to him going on, right?
Yeah.
But he, at the same time, hugely competent.
Yeah.
Everything he says comes out of a McKinsey playbook.
Yeah.
Right? The Harvard Business Review would say this is exactly what you should do.
Yeah.
It's just showing, though, how the traditional consulting viewpoint doesn't necessarily work for the bar industry.
Right.
And Jim, even though he's failing and stumbling along the way, he's approaching business properly from a general business standpoint. He's just missing that extra ingredient required for the bar industry. So I do think that's really important as a point for everybody listening, just because these folks are good. They're smart. They know what they're doing. They just happen to make some mistakes.
Right. And Bradley's kind of like, he's a hammer, everything's a nail kind of a guy. And Jim's focus, unfortunately, he brings in a consultant that's very much, and I won't say too much here to give it away, but he brings in a consultant that's very much aligned to his personal ideals and processes. Financial process, me, is something that I would focus on. We could have flipped this easily, right? We could have said, oh, they're really good at this other thing, at the people side and they're moving towards a financial side, that wasn't, the book you're writing. But yeah, I think it is, it was very important to us to make sure that, because we are consultants, I'm not saying, uh, it's that, hey, get the right person in. And that's, if there's a point around the consulting side, it's that, it's like identify, where your gaps are, and don't necessarily bring somebody who's exactly thinking the same things you are in a slightly different way.
Well, and Dave, I actually want to dig in a little bit deeper there with you, because I know you're a data guy. I'm a data guy. We both love P&Ls. We love
'em.
looking at the numbers.
Sexy.
And to me, though, one of the hardest things about the bar industry is balancing the numbers with the customer service, right? If you fail on either end, you're out of business. You have to do both of them and do them well, and you have to know how to manipulate the numbers without hurting your service. So, just kind of getting away from the book for a second, how do you approach that issue? Because the book does a nice job of kind of explaining this, but what's your personal philosophy?
Oh, I love that question. First off, I'm sorry I'm gonna do the classic. That's a great question. I really do. Because it's a question that's evolved for me over the last even 8 years, but probably 20, but really gotten very clear on the last 8 years. And it has to do with uh the other Dave there, Nitzel, his perspective on how this works. So I for the vast majority of my life, I was very hardwired. I have a degree in physics and mathematics. I was an engineer to start. But I'm an extreme extrovert as well. But I see everything as process, procedure, numbers, as black and white rules. And I've come to understand that the two are 100% interconnected. You cannot disconnect them at all. And it's a bit of, there's many push pull factors in business, right? You got profit versus revenue. Yeah, and there's list and list, but this is one of them. And if the difference, so with the people side versus the number side, is that in a lot of these, if I pull this lever and I push more into the people side, traditionally, if you like these polls, then I'm going to suffer on the number side. I think the beauty in our industry is, and part of the point that this book makes, is that there are ways, many ways, frankly, and I think most of them apply, that when we focus on the people in our business, the staff, the people running it, the ownership too, right? And we make sure that we're taking care of there, it actually impacts those numbers in a positive way. And then we go to you guys like you and I, and we say, we need to measure and track and then think about it and adjust, instead of having to think one or the other. And I got to focus on this, but then I have to focus. They really are they're so tightly connected. And I think we, as an industry, understand that on the customer side, right? If I take care of that person sitting across my bar, they're going to pay and want to come back, and repeat business is the golden standard and all these things. But adding that philosophy into like a people first side, which is, it's a point that Dave is driving home, and we go pretty deep in this. This is where, when Dave says, look, these are my concepts, like this is his concepts and philosophies. I understand them very well now because he and I talk about it ad nauseum. But it very much is that idea. And going deeper into the consulting side, so you got numbers guys like us. Dave is a natural coach, and he's the best coach I've ever known, to a point where I pay him to coach my team. Like I actively pay him money to coach my man, and the results are always incredible. But recently, and I asked him this beforehand because I was actually curious about it. I was like, we're going to be talking about this. I'm curious to know the answer. And I asked Dave, and I'm going to pitch this because I want him to answer it. I don't want to answer it for him. I said, look, you're doing some amazing coaching right now, some really impressive people. Like guys, most people would kill to have on their roster. And recently they've had some incredible results where they're having record-setting years. Their profits are going up, their revenue's going up, where most restaurants, even in the same areas, are really struggling. And I said, how much does this philosophy that we're talking about in the book apply to what's happened with your clients? And I think it's a fascinating question. I think it'd be great for him to answer here.
Go for it, Dave.
The things that we're writing about are the things that we know about and that we find useful. As far as maybe a overarching philosophy, which I don't think too much about, to be honest, I think data is an outcome. So we love data. One of the reasons we love data is because data doesn't push back. Data's it's objective. It tells you a certain truth, and it is what it is. And then you have to figure out how you're going to impact the data, which inevitably leads you back to people. You have to do something. Someone has to do something to generate an outcome. And perhaps one of my favorite sayings when I first started at UPS in management, which was at 20 years old, I remember one of our mottos was determined people working together can accomplish anything. I really believe that. At my core, I wholeheartedly believe that. So I may have said this before, but I believe that if the three of us were thrown on a pig farm tomorrow and we were determined to run a good pig farm, eventually we would. Now, that might mean we need to go out and find some people. We need to figure out, God only knows what we have to figure out. But if we have like-minded, determined people working towards a common goal, there's just not much you can't do. You know, we put someone on the moon in 63 or whenever it was, or 60, we said 63, delivered in 69, whatever it was. Like, determined people working together, I think, can accomplish anything. And I love numbers too. It gets a little underplayed. Like, I really enjoy numbers. Where I pull separation is I know that it's an outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so if you want to get in front of the numbers or you want to impact the numbers, unless you're an individual contributor, you're doing that through others.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you really want to move numbers, get great at working with, amongst, and through others. I don't even know if that answered the question.
Sort
I
of.
don't know if you did or not, but I like the soundbite.
Okay.
It is good. Well, what about, so one of the things that you and I discussed in that process was the self-funding management growth structure, right? The self-funding bonus structure.
Yeah.
That is very much a people first thing, right? It's designed to make sure that your team wins as you win, which is all about the concept of.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm a massive believer in shared rewards and shared ownership too. A lot of people are reticent to give away, and I use that term incorrectly, a portion of their profits. But the more people that you get bought into common goal, the more energy you're going to build towards that end. So if I come up with a program that says, hey, look, I need to grow this business by 10% this year, and what I'm going to do as a result of that is I'm going to share back to all of you a portion of that growth, and no small portion, a portion that makes you really care. And then I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that year over year. Well, look, now I have people that are all thinking about growing my business. You know, they say, I've heard this said before, and I don't even know if I agree with it. If you own the business, don't expect other people to care as much as you do. Well, that's true if you're the only one benefiting like an owner. But there's a lot of people out there that dream of some version of ownership, and they're never going to be positioned to enjoy the fruits of that type of labor. But if you're an owner, you're uniquely positioned to change that if you so choose. And what I'm suggesting is in that choice, you can multiply the outlook on the business from a leadership ownership perspective. I mean, look, why do I give a shit about the profitability of your business if I'm not invested in that whatsoever? I'm just getting a salary, or I'm just getting a check. I'm just working on tips, or my manager. I don't want to become a manager because I got to take a pay cut. All right. Well, yeah, look, that may be true. I'll give you a cut of the pie. If we lift this thing 10%, I'll give you 2% of the net at the end of the year, which could be an extra X, whatever it may be. But the more we can pull people together for common cause, the more likely that common cause is to become true. And we just change a mentality of people from having a job to being on a mission. And that's incredible power if you can sort that out.
And there's so much truth in that. When I had my bars, I did that exactly. And my managers were about 50% of their pay was paycheck. About 50% was a percentage of the bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing, though, that I found that was interesting, a lot of people want a bonus off of like prime cost or gross margin or something like that. I just gave them a cut of the very bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that meant as an owner, I couldn't buy a sports car on the company books because that would screw their money. But it made sure, I mean, I had an assistant manager that 1 month went crazy about paper cost. Audited every piece of paper in the building, determined what we did and didn't need, redid all our PARs, and came back and he's like, yeah, this is going to save us $5,000 a year. And that means I get an extra $700. I'm like, cool, dude. Great, thanks.
And you're telling me, and someone will tell you that person's incapable, or we shouldn't expect them to think like an owner, but that's exactly them thinking like an owner. And it's because people work to how we motivate them. People work to how we incentivize them, I should say. So if you incentivize me to just transact, meaning I get a salary, then my goal is to come in, and I'm not saying people consciously do this, isn't any or all, and I don't like extremes. But that means that basically I'm going to come in and I'm going to transact on a management level. You're paying me to do a thing, and I'm going to do that thing based on my own determination of what manager is, and I'm going to live there. Chris, if I said to you, I'm going to hire you next week to work in our organization and you're going to make $250,000 a year, you're going to be, hopefully you'd be at least consider that. But then if I say, and then I'm going to give you a 50% kicker on that. If you hit these 3 targets, you're going to make an extra $150,000 bonus check at the end of the year. What are you going to be motivated to do? Hit those 3 things,
if you
right?
offered me that, the question would be, where do I sign?
Yeah, where do I sign? Where do I sign? And what are those 3 targets and how do I get there?
Yeah.
How quickly did you forget the $250 in salary and went right to the whatever I said, went right to the $125 in bonus? People work to how you incentivize them. It's true in every business, by the way. But then in our industry, we don't quite, not every, some people get this. Some people crush this. Some people are absolutely lost in it. And some people aren't even thinking about it. But how do we incentivize people to work in the way that is important to us, whatever that is, because that's a different answer for people as well. From a coaching perspective, what you may have wanted for your bar may not be the same that someone might want for their restaurant or for anything, right? So we don't have, when we do coach folks, I'm not trying to turn this into an infomercial, but when we coach folks, I don't have a program as such, where a lot of people are selling you their program. And that can be great. Some people need a program. I can't coach that way, so I don't try.
Well, and I can't coach that way either. And Domzalski, I'm sure you have an opinion here as well. So I'll get you in a second. But to me, if I have data, I'm going to go where the data tells me to go.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because every bar and restaurant's different. And that's, to go back to the book, one of the things I love about it, because it's specific enough to tell the story, but generic enough that definitely everything applies everywhere.
Yeah.
But with the coaching side, if you have a labor problem, why am I going to waste my time talking to you about liquor cost? Let's solve your labor problem first. If you have a liquor cost problem and your labor's good, I don't want to talk to you about labor. So I think, to your point, Dave, a lot of folks in coaching go to here's my program rather than here's what your data is telling me. Let's go solve the big problem first.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not so on the nose. So where you have to be careful, Dave and I have had a million of these conversations, by the way, Chris, about data. Like there's an old saying that says liars figure and figures lie. Sometimes data is a matter of interpretation too.
Mm-hmm.
So you may say, we see this a lot, Lord knows. You may say, look, you have a liquor cost problem. Let's go solve the liquor cost. But if you think that the liquor cost problem isn't potentially connected to a people problem, you can be solving the wrong problem. Dave will talk about that, right? So there's very few things that you don't tie somehow back to people, and the people might be the guest as well. But something's going to tie back to some version of humanity. And yeah, could it be as simple as you've underpriced your menu? It could be. I find that that's rarely the case. Usually if someone's underpriced their menu, they have a belief system that sort of, undergirds that pricing. Mm-hmm. I can't price higher than that because ... And now we have to have a conversation about why is that true? And it may be legitimate. I'm not saying that's not legitimate, but you're tying back to value propositions and belief systems and all those sorts of things. And Domzalski has a ton of experience.
I do. I mean, fundamentally, my core business is I own a bar metrics franchise, right? So we're doing, the easiest way to say is liquor inventory control, which I don't like saying because it's very diminishing of what it really is. We're managing beverage programs, and it could be as easy as I'm counting your stuff. I'm producing amazing numbers that are super, super accurate that you can use in your business. But as Dave said, the reality is twofold. One, sometimes I'll go into a place and look, I have a main path here. It's a system. I'm going to help you make your beverage program as profitable as humanly possible. That conversation in itself, even in that narrow of a vertical, can happen. And it did yesterday. I actually had an amazing meeting with one of my clients yesterday, one of my favorites. And we're talking about, where their numbers are, what they want to focus on. And the vast majority of the conversation was me asking questions, right? It's a classic. I'm a consultant. I borrow your watch and tell you what time it is. And B, giving them sort of direction and understanding and how to achieve the results and the goals. So they want to talk about 20 things, might one, maybe two. And that's only if you have two different people who can, be accountable to each of those things you're discussing. But as we have a conversation, and it's massive amounts of data, you would go nuts, Chris. You saw the stuff we have on it. It's beautiful for guys like us. But the conversation went from, hey, we have losses over here, we want to fix that, to look, my ultimate goal is this particular cost of goods. I'm like, you haven't achieved that all year at your targets, like to get the potential target. And they said, well, then, so I can't do it. So true. And as Dave said, we had a conversation. What do you have? You have some three fundamental parts of your business identity that have to do with pricing. You want to be neighborhood, but you're in a very like high expensive tourist area. I don't want to give too much away. I don't want to out them. Confidentiality is very important. And you have high end cocktails, right? So you have a certain level of cost you're going to have to maintain. However, we can look at all sorts of things in the business. So let's start. And I gave him like 10. I said, look, there's so many levers to pull. I gave him a bunch of options. And he ended up at the end, I said, which do you want to do? Without boring you with all at once, he goes, in happy hour. I think the problem's at happy hour. I said, if you think it's there, it's probably where it's at. And and he's like, well, do I need to? No, I can do the easy part. The easy part is getting you that information. The harder part will be digging into how you want to adjust that back end stuff. Yes, I love the data side, and I coach and consult very differently than Nitzel does, but probably approaching going towards. I tend to adopt things really well that other people do. So I've gotten more into like, trying to coach to the person rather than to the system, that's Dave's magic, right? He coaches directly to the person sitting across him, which is why I pay him to coach my operations manager, and the results have been like ridiculous, worth every penny. Now I'm plugging him.
We're okay with it.
Yeah, I know, right? But then it goes this back and forth, right? So it's like, hey, where are you trying to go? Where do you think the issue is? What do we need to solve here? Is there anything to solve here in this space? And then now let's go to the human side. How do we do that for you? Is this a guest thing, a staff thing? Is it whatever? Make sure they don't overwhelm the team by trying to do too much at once. So you can't separate the two. And if you're coaching hardcore to a system, Dave and I, in another program, we were being coached by somebody else, and it was pure system. Fill this out, fill this sheet out, do this. And honestly, as a systems guy, I hated it. It didn't produce much for me. I looked, I was like, oh, this is a great result. What do we do with it? And because it wasn't somebody across saying, well, for you, you're going to do this, but for Nitzel, he's going to do, and how do you see? You just can't. If you think you can separate the two, you're just wrong. Now you could probably build a system you could sell to a lot of people, but it's going to fizzle out at some point if you don't have that other side of it. And it goes back to a comment I think Dave made earlier of, the barrier to entry to coaching and consulting is very low, right? Hang your single, and now I'm a coach, a consultant. But the barrier to becoming good at it is just as high as anything else. You need to study, you need to practice, you need to understand it, you need to learn, you probably need to get coached. And if you don't, you'll end up muddying the waters like a lot of people do. That's my thoughts.
We're getting a little short on time, but Domzalski, I got one follow-up question from you on everything you just said, because there's one thing I want to dive in on a little bit, which is we get the data, then we have to get it to the people. But what you alluded to there with your client was going through a root cause analysis to determine, okay, where am I going to do this? And to me, where I see a lot of bar owners have issues is saying, okay, I know this data point is wrong, but I don't know how to solve it. So if you were going to give somebody just simple advice on here's how you can go from the data to the solution, do your root cause analysis, what would that be?
So you want to like, what is like my series of questions, or
like
how do I get there?
The five whys.
If I'm some dude and I'm like, okay, my labor cost is high and I know it, how do I figure out why and what I need to do?
Gotcha. So the first thing I do, in mind is, so a client says, well, I'm going to go back to the liquor side because I've got all the data. And they say, so my client said, look, I want to be at 14.5% cost of goods. I say, you're not there. So in terms of how I get there, I start at the very, very top. So, okay, you want to be at 14.5, right? So with the 30,000 foot view, people call it like 10 years ago, this is the common way to talk about things. Then I go down to the next level. So what categories in your business are off? Then I can go down another level. Is it a cocktail or is it a product level issue? Is it a it's kind of a five whys. Is it a flat cost? Like, here's my targets. Is it that issue? Is it a what we're paying for it, a wholesale cost issue? Is it a happy hour? Is it one of those buried hidden things? I go towards the simple first. That's where I like to start. My client wanted to go to the complex of happy hour. That's a little more complex. I like to go straight to, okay, what's the easiest questions to answer? Let's knock out the easy stuff first. Because if the answer's there, we just spent no time. And if it's not there, at least we know that that's set up correctly. It never hurts to confirm that things are set up correctly, right? So first thing I'm doing with them is verify your recipes that we have in our system. Let's make sure we're giving you the right data. Everything's 100% above board. So when you go to your staff to talk about it, they're not going, well, they might not have. You don't need that, and I don't need you to need that. And then it gets a little more complicated. So you go to the next little more complicated level down, which might be you're going to track these products individually. We have an app, right? So it's a spot checkout. You're gonna count these, and I'm gonna help you do variance on those day by day by day. That's a little more involved. Then we go down to, like I said, we can go down to the happy hour cost, and that gets a lot more complex. Cost and conversation can get a lot more complex, as you know, right? So I guess that's it, right? I go from the very broad numbers to see is there an issue here? Is there a target that we want to reset? And then we go down level by level, focusing on simple before complex. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. That answers my question, because it's really good advice, right? And that's how you have to think when it comes to your data. You have to be systematic. Otherwise, you're not going to get to the root cause. You're not going to get the right answer, and you're not going to improve your business.
I have one more thing I'll say. Our company, we're about to launch an AI platform, which is insanely cool. And the more I learn about AI, the more I understand the difference between I can talk to ChatGPT versus I can train something on a very, very specific industry, and you hear about people training things on this industry and everything broke. They don't know how to. It's tough when you're trying to get it to get specific. I've been using a platform, and I actually, for this meeting, I have a client. Now, I didn't, a few kind of cool new things. I uploaded something and said, hey, tell me what you see here. So I'm starting to apply just a very broad statement. I'm starting to apply AI in two ways. One is to, analyze the data faster and get to root issues more quickly. And I'm currently training a platform to do that just for myself. And then we'll have our standard one from head office, and I'll see where they meet, because I'm a nerd. I just can't leave things alone. And then on the other side, I'm also doing this so that my base level coach in my business will now be able to analyze the way I do. So it closes this massive knowledge gap. And then at the same time, it's going to sort of naturally teach them when it says, hey, look at these three things. And I don't have to say, hey, what do you see here? The AI does that for me. And so that it sort of trains them up. But also, as they get trained up, they're still going to rely on that to say, okay, do this quickly for me, so then I can do the part that you can't, which is the conversation with the client. Because those go so meandering and crazy and weird, and AI isn't there yet. That's just something I've just started doing with the data side. It's been helpful, but it still has to go back to that process that I described earlier.
100%. Because we're running out of time, Nitzel, anything you want to throw out there at the end?
We didn't write the book just to write a book, although it is absolutely true. I've wanted to write a fable since we first wrote The Bar Shift. I think I see one of the responsibilities, I think, of a good coach or consultant is to be able to have the time to look out over the horizon a little more in a world where people are really consumed by this industry consumes you. And I have great empathy for that. So I think part of our job is to try to, the people that we work with, the books that we write, they're targeted at something. I think the industry's changing yet again. It started off, I've been in it 15 years now. It feels like I still just got here, but 15 years, I guess, is no small thing. I probably should stop saying it. But, when I first started, we're in the bar and restaurant business. And then at some point, very soon after that, it became more in the experience business. And everyone got really big on that cliche. We give great experiences. I think it's moving towards now we're in the people business. And I think that's a really important transition that especially ownership in our industry has to make, because I think the industry for a long time has been very transactional as it relates to employees, staff, management. And on both sides of the equation, by the way, people would see this industry as transitional work. I'm going to go wait tables. I'm in between jobs. And that was sort of a reciprocal treatment. It was a turnstile, and hey, I'm not going to overly invest in people. My give-a-shits are going to be pretty low because they're only going to be here on average 4 to 6 months. And I'm running a bar and restaurant and a temp agency, and that's just the way that it is. I think it's going to be really important that we get out of the temp agency business side of that equation. There's not many, and I think that there's huge upside to working in this industry. I reject the idea that this is sort of a dead-end place. There's not many jobs or careers where you could start off as a dishwasher and in 5 steps be an owner. That just doesn't really exist anywhere else. It's a really unique opportunity. And if we treat the employees and the work as if this is a really great, unique opportunity where you can make real money for yourself, come in and, it's almost like an apprenticeship if you want to treat it that way. And if ownership affords that learning to people don't just leave jobs like that. People just leave jobs for a little bit more money when they give no shits and have no investment in the job that they're in. But if they are connected to what the hardest thing in the world to find is, in my opinion, a great boss. People don't quit great bosses. In fact, they will sacrifice to stay with a great boss because it's such a rare find. I don't know that you can simply teach it. I think some of it's learned, and I think some of it is innate. As the generational shifts are happening, I think there's significant change. The boomers and Gen Xers, look, bars were just a place. We just go there. It was part of our natural conditioning. You went there to meet people. You went there to mingle. We would go there by ourselves. I don't care, Matt. The 3 of us would probably gladly walk into a bar and sit down and have a beer and have no, man, my Gen Zers and such, they're not going to a bar alone at all. And thinking about working at a bar is even more foreign than the idea of going to one by themselves. That is a significant fundamental shift in how people view this industry. And if you're stuck in the old ways of valuing people, that can get you in real trouble in a real hurry, because when faced with competition that gets that, you can find yourself unfortunately becoming a bit of a dinosaur. And I don't want anyone to turn into a dinosaur. So the idea of all of our books is to help people on that journey to look out over the horizon and create content in a way that people can consume it and go, you know what, I fucking get it. I get that. And I can do that. And if I need a little help, that's the kind of help that can be useful. And so that's the big idea, Chris. I would close with that.
That is a fantastic way to close. Because we set up this episode at the beginning and we said, hey, we're going to have a competition about books and we got to figure out who owes who a drink. Where can people get your book in case they decide they like you more than me?
Well, that's a great question. It'll be exclusively first on Amazon, where all of our books are. So all of our stuff is on Amazon. And right now, the final edit with the editor is going too slow. So it's supposed to be out in 2 weeks. So we're targeting a launch of 2 weeks, which when this drops when, Chris, this podcast?
2 weeks.
2/11.
No, it should be, should be dropping right around the same time.
With any luck, go on to Amazon, search A Tale of Two Taverns, A Hospitality Fable.
And then Hospitality DNA, and then The Bar Shift. Buy all 3. Yep. They're a triptych.
How could you not buy all 3?
Really quick non-sequitur question. Sorry. Is this the first restaurant business fable? Do you know of another one, Chris? Because I can't find one.
I don't.
That's where my competitive nature comes in. I want to be first.
I don't. And I think it's fantastic. And the other thing too is, and I just want to say this for the record, there are not very many people that are writing high quality stuff for the bar industry. right?
High quality.
There
Thank you.
aren't many books out there. And even the attention to detail you guys pay in your books, where you have good cover design, you have a formatting that is readable, right? So many of these industry books I pick up, and they're just not, they don't come off as a professional piece of material. Your guys' books come off like, hey, this is actually made by somebody legit that wrote a real book. And so it's wonderful that you guys are out here doing that for the industry.
That's a
Thank you.
massive compliment.
Thank you.
I think part of that too, Chris, is I was affected greatly in my come up by books. Business books
Yep.
affected me.
Yep.
And I have a great, and so does Dave. Yeah. And we both have a real respect for the power of the written word. And I'm not a writer. Like Dave and I grind over this, Chris. Like it's hard. It's no small thing. It's no small thing. It's such a relief when it's over. But no, we take it as serious as I think we know how. And we are inspired by, David mentioned Getting Naked, or the previous book
Good to great.
was inspired by Good to Great. Who Moved My Cheese was this super simple business fable that I loved in like the 90s and stuff. And those books imprint on us. And I consider it an honor to be able to write a book that can affect people and imprint on them. But we also owe it to, it's not unlike what I said about coaching. The barrier to entry to writing a book now is zero, essentially. Like anyone can write a book now. And I tend to think that's a great thing, mostly. The problem is it can be, what is it? Forrest Gump, like a box of chocolates. You don't know what you're going to get. Like sometimes, hey, you get the one, you're like, oh, that sucks. But it's a book and someone put the effort in. But anyway, not sorry to be long-winded. Thank you. And we do take it really serious, and we hope that people enjoy it. And if you buy it, please leave a kind review. Even if you don't like it, go ahead and drop that 5-star on it.
Absolutely. That's true for all books that Dave or I have written. Just go rate them all 5 stars today.
5-star. You can tell us why it's bad, but just give us that 5 stars.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll do some cross promoting with you too, Chris. When yours comes out, man, we're gonna work hard for you and help get the word out for yours as well.
We're gonna have some fun for sure. So if you're listening, scroll down in the show notes. There will be either a link to the book when this comes out, if that exists at that point, or we'll just go ahead and link their author profile, which will have all the books on there for you from Amazon, so you can get on and grab a copy of that book. Grab a copy of Dave's book, grab a copy of my book. Pick one or the other, decide who you like more, because we got a bet going on this.
But you have to read them both to really understand if you like them. So you have to buy both books, and then maybe we'll judge it by the Amazon reviews. That's who wins. For our data.
Use our data as our Amazon reviews. Now we're getting into some.
Here we go.
We'll buy both books, rate both books, tell us who's smarter. How about that, guys?
I already know the answer. That's you, Chris. That's you.
So we're buying you drinks, I guess. I don't know.
But Dave and Dave, thank you so much for being here. I have really enjoyed this conversation, digging in on this new book, because I think it's something different. It's interesting. And I really hope that people read it, because at least to me, it spoke so much to my journey as a bar owner and showed me a lot of things I did very well, a lot of mistakes I made. And it's just such a good, easy way to get a really good grasp on the industry and what you should think about.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you.
That about wraps it up for today. If you enjoyed today's insights, make sure you like, subscribe, and leave a review. If you are ready to take your bar to the next level, schedule a strategy session with me by clicking the link in the show notes below. Until next time, have a great day, and we will talk again later.